two stories, page 20 that is. One is NSAS at one, insurance firms unveil report pay 9 billion naira claims on deaths and property. Page 20. Still on page 20, NMPC pipeline security maintenance gulp 32.56 billion naira in 6 months, says a report. The main story on the Punch newspaper is APC convention under threat, aggrieved party members cite ruling against Buni. APC convention under threat, aggrieved party members cite ruling against Buni. You get that, details of that on page 2. It has the following writers. One, Buni's panel not recognized by law, activities will be illegal, says an Ekiti group. The second writer is, we informed National Secretariat about our Congress, says Lagos for Lagos. And the final writer on that story is Kiamo's group hates for appeal court against Omo Agege's faction. Now, I'm coming down under the, down to the foot of the page, we have a story on page 29 that says, Muhammad suspends Bauchi agency boss over alleged misconduct and others probe. And on page 11, 918 health centers shut as cholera cases soar. 918 health centers shut as cholera cases soar. Page 11. And on page 20, it's dangerous linking your SIM to another subscriber's NIN, says NCC. Dangerous, really, to link your SIM to another subscriber's NIN, according to NCC. Details of that on page 20. And finally, on page 3, many traders killed as gunmen open fire in Sokoto Market. Page 3. On page 8, 10 bandits killed in Kaduna local government gun battle, that is, according to the commissioner, that's Commissioner of Police there. And on page 9, we have Idil Maulud, report declining insecurity. Buhari tells media, Lawan and governors preach peace. Details of that on page 9. Kingsley?
Thank you, Madabo, for the headlines from the front page of the Punch. Now, let's take a look also at the headlines on the window page of the Nation newspaper. From above the nameplate, you have the following headlines. Ex-Zaki and wife sue federal government over passport seizure. Maulud Nabi, President, Sultan, governors, and Khan greet Muslims. That's page 6. Buhari eulogizes ex-U.S. icon Powell, 1937 to 2021. Top media chiefs for Guild of Editors Conference, that's page 6. And below the nameplate, Anambra 2021, Uba 6 court nod to visit Kano in detention. And Kano slammed with more treason charges. And the writer says Southeast governors, Igbo leaders, ready for dialogue with federal government on separatist group leader. This story has the kicker, insecurity and others. The U.S. joins forces with Nigeria. We are pushing back insecurity, says Buhari. 6 more Super Tucano jets in. And other writers there, President, no more hiding place for bandits, and gunmen kill many in Sokoto community, and a policeman in Boeing. Oil price rise pushes foreign reserves to 39.5 billion US dollars. And the photograph there on the front page shows the White House Deputy National Security Advisor presented a photograph of a Super Tucano jet to the Vice President, that's Professor Yemi Oshibajo, when he met with the officials at the presidential villa in Abuja yesterday. Court orders release of Odile's passport. Senate committees get deadline on budget. Ayo.
Thank you, Kingsley. Today is Maulud, and President Muhammadu Buhari has congratulated Muslims and all Nigerians on the occasion of Eid al-Maulud, marking the birth of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He used the occasion to reassure that significant gains are being made in combating insecurity. A statement by Senior Special Assistant Garbache, who quotes the president as saying that, "I'm delighted to send greetings of peace, unity, and goodwill to fellow citizens on the occasion of Eid al-Maulud observed the world over. He urged all to strive for forgiveness and closeness to emulate the noble life of and teachings of the Prophet. The president says increased cooperation and collaboration from citizens has reinvigorated police and military leadership to score more victories against terror, criminality, and economic sabotage. He called on the media that it is time now to come to replace their prefix of rising insecurity with a reportage of declining insecurity. So the president is setting the agenda for the media. Senate President Ahmed Lawan also recalled the virtues and the peaceful coexistence and love and tolerance which the Prophet of Islam taught and lived by, and commended that to all Nigerians. Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila urged Nigerians to remain united, steadfast, and continue to pray for the country and its leadership, and also to live peacefully with their neighbors. There are messages of peace, tolerance, and good neighborliness from governors of several states of the Federation. Bandits have invaded Goroyo Market on Sunday evening about 4:30 p.m., and it is reported that they killed over 30 persons. The bandits arrived at the market, which is patronized by citizens Sokoto and neighboring streets, as well as traders from Niger Republic. They were said to have invaded the market in the evening and shot point blank at traders. Some persons had to lie down to avoid being killed. As many as 30 persons or more were feared killed, and 17 others sustained injury. President Muhammadu Buhari in the statement have told the criminal bandits to be ready for a crushing defeat. Reacting to the Koroyo market killing, Garba Shehu in the statement said the president says Nigerians should not despair, as his administration is more than ever now determined to protect Nigerians from the murderous criminal gangs that are trying to make life uncomfortable for Nigerians. The criminals have no respect for the sanctity of human life, but their days are numbered. He sympathized with the families of the victims of the Goroyo market attack, and he called on the people to be partners with the military and the police, particularly in areas of providing information, so that the crushing blow that is planned by the military forces can be dealt on the criminals across the nation. And in River State, 500 gang member group who belong to cult group that have been terrorizing Andoni local government area in River State have now renounced cultism. The chairman of the Andoni Traditional Ruler Council, Job Nabiget, led others, traditional rulers, to witness the renouncing and the oath-taking ceremony. The chairman Nabiget advised the repentant gang members not to return to the life of crime. He promised to assist the local government to ensure that they are meaningfully engaged. The local government chairman of Andoni, Erastus Awotu, also said that the renouncing ceremony was the climax of effort by the traditional rulers and the local government in Andoni. He said the root cause of insecurity in the area will now be over. He said the local government is to enact a bylaw that will be against the felling of trees, and he promised to engage some of the youth as forest guards. President Muhammadu Buhari has condoled the President Biden of United States, the people of United States, over the death of Colin Powell, the former Secretary of State, who is reported to have died from complications for coronavirus at age 84. He says that as he's the first African-American chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, the highest position in the Department of Defense, and also he was later the first African-American to become Secretary of State. Colin Powell he described as an exceptional leader, one of America's greatest pride, a professional soldier, a distinguished public servant, and an effective diplomat who gave his utmost to his country. President Muhammadu Buhari says his thoughts and prayers and those of Nigerians are with the general's family, the people of America, at this difficult moment. The other stories of interest relates to what the Vice President has pointed out, saying that Nigeria, through what it has received from COVAX alliance and other friendly nations, nevertheless, will not be able to make more than 4% of eligible population by way of vaccination by the end of 2021. Professor Sibajo therefore said that Nigeria cannot afford not to have its own vaccine production facility. In other words, Nigeria, he says, is required to have its own vaccine production. He spoke at the International Conference Center on Health Across Access Beyond COVID-19. He revealed that Nigeria is in talks with a World Bank private lending arm and others to raise about $30 million to help finance a vaccine plant. The Vice President called for private sector-led initiative to make Nigeria self-sufficient in basic drug production and also a net exporter to the African continent. He asserted that Nigeria has the human capital to build a more effective healthcare system. There are plans, he says, to begin construction of a bio-vaccine Nigeria Limited in the first quarter of next year.
Oh, well, that's some good news there coming from the Vice President, really, but it calls for some concern and, of course, some interrogation here. Looking at our size as, if I may call the giant of Africa, and of course, our population, our market, and everything. And given the fact that the CBN had been on top of this all the while, giving out a lot of money, and even seeking pharmaceuticals and pharmacists to come out and then try to establish pharmaceutical companies and the rest of them. But when we look at this situation, only 4% by 2021, and quoting the Vice President directly, saying that Nigeria cannot afford to always be looking for assistance or help or whatever from vaccines, not forgetting the fact that the countries or developed countries where these vaccines are being produced seem to be rather to care so much about themselves now first, and some have even gone to the extent of trying to stop exporting these vaccines until when they have enough for their local consumption. And I think Nigeria should wake up to this challenge. I don't know what came out of the earlier promise by the federal government or the Federal Minister of Health that it has a lot, or rather a sort of a prize or money to give to Nigerians that could come up with vaccines, to have it manufactured in Nigeria. We were only able to at least have some test kits produced.
Well, there were encouragement and funds for vaccine research to come up with vaccines, not just only for even COVID-19, various other ailments, and that has been ongoing. But what the Vice President is talking about is the production of vaccines itself. You will recall that the vaccine that Nigeria first received came all the way from India, because India has a factory for vaccines that is identified and recognized as one of the largest in the world. And we now have to depend on vaccines. And when the challenge of COVID-19 became grievous, every nation would tend to take care of its citizens first before it allows vaccine to be exported. And that was why the vaccine crisis became hectic. And if you go by the statistics, 4% of our population, if our estimated population is 200 million, it means at the end of 2021, not up to 8 million persons will have been vaccinated. And that is very, very, very low. If we are to strive to achieve, to drive away COVID-19, that kind of level is not what is required.
It's really on the low side, really.
Well, there are a number of issues, gentlemen, that you have raised, and which the international conference is also intended to address. Ultimately, it has to do with pharma security. That's to say, pharmaceutical security or medicine security. And it should be an ongoing investment, relentless and substantial. What we haven't seen is private individuals and even governments pumping in money into pharmaceutical research or general medicine research. The Director General of NIPRID has been our guest on Good Morning Nigeria.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're looking for tens of millions for them to continue with their research, which will include clinical trials. And as you know, Nadabu, this take years. And you have to have the controlled population and so on and so forth. In the meantime, you can see how we waste money on other things. You find the exotic cars on our streets. I presume, for instance, that you probably have more Toyota SUVs in Nigeria than you have in Japan.
Yes.
You probably also have more Range Rover SUVs in Nigeria than you have in the UK. We're just wasting money on those things that don't matter. When you engage in research, you will then get a patent if you have a discovery. It is that patent that will enable you to produce, which is why we are having some issues now with the supply of vaccines, because Europe, which is the capital of pharmaceutical production around the world, is not willing to relax the patent rules to enable others to produce. So first of all, for you to produce, you must be licensed.
Yes, you must have the patent.
You must, if you know, even if somebody has the patent, can license you.
Lease it to you.
Precisely. You know, become a franchisee. You are then licensed. But if it is your own original invention or discovery, it's a cash cow. The malaria vaccine has come from outside Nigeria. You remember one of the deprecatory remarks that the colonial adventurers used to describe West Africa in the past. They described particularly Freetown or Sierra Leone, described it as a white man's grave on account of a malaria infestation. So why is it that we have not focused on funding research consistently and continuously? That is the key. There are a number of other areas to actually look at. Look, one of the things, gentlemen, I'm sure you must have gone to the pharmacy to pick up some of these items, particularly since last year when COVID came and they said, oh, if you boosted your immunity, it could also be of help to you. I have never seen in any pharmacy a Nigerian-produced vitamin C that is 1,000 milligrams. What, is it not citrus? You go to Benue, you see...
it's even all over the place.
You go to Benue, oranges, they rot on the trees. Mm. So we can't produce high-potency vitamin C. We can't produce high-potency zinc.
Yeah, I was thinking, Kingsley, that at least, even without anything, the COVID-19 could have given us, the leverage and the leeway, the challenge, to come up with something of world standard. Mm-hmm. I mean, pharmaceuticals or hospital facilities and things like that. Look at Kenya and South Africa. They have this license now to produce vaccines. And what about Nigeria?
Well, we keep talking about is it GAVA, or I don't know the name. I know the name, but say, oh, that's the agency that is now dealing with vaccines. Cholera. Remember, cholera has killed thousands, and we are saying we are waiting for the vaccines to come from outside, for us to vaccinate our people and treat them. I mean, in any case, there is a trigger from COVID-19 to say, look, focus on yourselves. If we're to have another pandemic, you would see the way the advanced world would react. That they would take care of themselves, and then leave the rest of the world.
And they will for sure. Well,
big time.
That's it.
Big time. And then Colin Powell, may his soul rest in peace. 84 years, passed away yesterday morning. Celebrated military officer. He was the first African American to have been named Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff. And at the time he was named Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff in 1989. He was also the youngest to have ever occupied that position, and also became the first African American to have become the Secretary of State. That's like the foreign minister for the U.S. Dignified man, dignified presence, even though, of course, they all goofed over the weapons of mass destruction that Saddam Hussein was supposed to have been storing, and then led to the invasion of Iraq. Second time around.
Well, there was much more than that, anyway.
There was, but of course.
It was weapons of mass lying.
Absolutely.
And a similar one has been published by,
really.
A similar one has been published by Washington Journal, that's Wall Street Journal, claiming that Nigeria had to pay 20 million to ban this.
We discussed that. We discussed that yesterday. But one point which we need also to clarify, since we're discussing vaccines and vaccination, Colin Powell was fully vaccinated against coronavirus. And according to his family, he passed on account of complications arising from coronavirus. Now, he also, from the family disclosure, had his immune system was compromised because he had two major ailments that said, one, Parkinson's disease, and then he also had cancer of the blood. So it was going to be an uphill. His wife had COVID-19, but the wife survived. So you know, I'm saying this on account of the naysayers who will say even persons who are fully vaccinated, they still die from coronavirus. So why take the vaccine in the first instance?
Once the complications are there, you know, these underlying sicknesses.
If there are underlying sicknesses,
yeah,
it becomes
really difficult. You can't really have it done. Oh, well, thank you so very much, Bayo. It's a pleasure being here this morning. Thank you. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll be back with the full discussion on our topic this morning after this break. Stay with us.
NPHCDA commenced Phase 2 vaccination of all persons 18 years and above with safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines approved by WHO and certified by NAFDAC. Special arrangement has been made for staff, their dependents and retirees of ministries, departments and agencies of government, private corporate organizations and non-governmental organizations. To benefit from this special arrangement, visit www.nphcda.gov.ng/corporate vaccination/ to obtain, fill and submit the Google form. NPHCDA will contact you within 48 hours. Protect yourself, your family and your workplace against COVID-19. COVID-19 vaccines are free, safe and effective. For further inquiries, call 0700-220-1122 or send a mail to covid19.vaccination@nphcda.gov.ng. This message is from the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency.
Hey there, what's on your bucket list? Would you like to travel the world, live your best life? What if I told you you could blow right this minute and do everything on that list? Airtel is saying thank you to all loyal customers. You stand a chance to win up to 100 million naira with guaranteed cash tokens in the Airtel Recharge and Blow promo. How awesome is that? All you have to do is recharge to win. For more information, dial *444*4# to enter for the draw. Everyone's a winner, so hurry now. The more you recharge, the more you win.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
A new edition of TV Guide is out exclusively with Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State.
Since assuming office, our rescue administration has pursued the path of peace and reconciliation and restored confidence among people of different ethnic, religious, and political persuasions. Peace is back on the plateau. We are building world-class infrastructure in roads and opening up opportunities for innovation.
The edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from entertainment, economy, sports, media, politics, family, and lots more. Pick up a copy and keep abreast with issues and trending features within our space. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Well, political parties' primary is critical to the emergence of candidates for various selective positions, especially that independent candidates are not well entrenched in the nation's democracy. So, the Senate approval of direct primaries for the political parties generated mixed reactions by various key players. Ikena Hindelue has this background to our discussion this morning.
In many democratically run nations, political parties are central to governance, given the roles they play, both in agenda setting and in producing aspirants from whom the electorate will choose their leaders. For the past 22 years, Nigeria has had uninterrupted democracy, and within this period, the selection of party candidates has been either through direct or indirect primaries, usually at the discretion of the political parties. Just last week, during the deliberations on the 2021 Electoral Amendment Bill, the Senate approved that political parties in Nigeria should adopt direct primaries to choose candidates for all elective positions, and that they should be monitored by the Independent National Electoral Commission. For simple definitions, a direct primary is one whereby members of a political party choose their party's candidates, while an indirect primary is one whereby party members elect delegates from among themselves who in turn decide the party's standard bearers for upcoming elections. With the atmosphere already warming up for the 2023 general elections, some have applauded the move, while others see it as an infringement on the independence and internal democratic workings of individual political parties. Since the approval of the direct mode of primaries by the Senate, the two major political parties at the National Assembly, the All Progressives Congress and the People's Democratic Party, have expressed divergent positions on the matter. While the APC favors direct primaries, the PDP says the mode should remain at the discretion of the political parties. While advocates of direct primaries believe it is a more democratic way of nominating candidates, others believe it is more expensive and does not guarantee free and fair elections.
I don't see any reason why anybody should be afraid of direct primary. It helps the people who are members of your party to feel wanted.
It is more cheaper, less cumbersome to have indirect primary election.
There are some who want this. There are some who are opposed to it. It's for the conference committee to retreat after the submissions by our colleagues. You can now go to the House engagement with an opinion of the Senate.
What is the rationale behind approval of the direct mode of primaries? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be speaking to the issues in a moment.
Thank you very much, Ekene Ndulwe, for that backgrounder. With us in the studios are four guests. Here, let's now right away introduce distinguished Senator Kabir Gaya. He's chairman of the Senate Committee on INEC, and is also, of course, the former governor of Kano State. Distinguished Senator, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, and good morning, Nigerians.
Also here with us in the studios is Oluwole Osaze Ozi, the former Director of Voter Education and Publicity of INEC. He's a lawyer and election expert. Oluwole, pleasure to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
I also want to introduce Dr. Leonard Ezenwa, Chairman, Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thanks for having me on the program this morning.
Joining us for discussion also is Samson Itodo, Executive Director, Yaga Africa, and convener, Not Too Young to Run. It's a pleasure to have you back to Nigeria.
Always a delight, and good morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, gentlemen, once again, a pleasure to have you with us for today's conversation, and happily, Senator Kabir Gaya, who chairs the Senate Committee on INEC, is our guest. Straight away, tell us, why did the Senate settle for direct primaries in the choice of party candidates for elections?
Well, first of all, I will like to explain that this is based on our experience in party politics. We have played this position of indirect since 1991. I was a product of these direct primaries. When I ran for the governorship in 1991, the policy was to do option A4, which is just like a direct primaries, and which was done. I was a young man going through campaigning in all the local government areas and the villages. That makes me familiar with the people and at least become a bit popular with the people. And when it came to the primaries, that was what helped me, because it was not issue of funding or money that makes you win election. Like in these days now, when you go for election in direct primaries, you have to go for the highest bidder. People campaign on what they put. So the Senate found that it is much more democratic to allow every member of the party to elect his candidate. And by so doing, it makes you now become even a campaigner or an agent or a full supporter of the candidate that's winning the election. I remember when I won the primaries during those days, those party members that supported me to win the primaries were the major people campaigning for me, because they wanted to protect their vote, that they have voted me to become the candidate, and they wanted really to protect that candidate. And it works well. And secondly, when you do direct primaries, you get closer to the people, and that really helps you more, because you have to go around to almost every ward to campaign. And that makes you understand what are the needs of the people if we win election. Because you go to the villages, you understand how they live, you understand also their problems, their predicaments, and you promise them those things that you can get them out of that problems. And it helps a lot, and that's why most of us in the Senate agreed on the direct primary. It is much easier. If some people say it might cost you more, but it may be difficult for you to spend the money you are thinking as a delegate when you have delegates election. Delegate election, they goes for the highest bidder. Some can say 100,000 per delegate, and another person who has money, who didn't even know much about the party, he just came in with his bags of money, and he put the highest figure. And if you spend so much in indirect primaries, you won election. It means you are investing money into that election. It is like a business. You put 1 billion, you want to recover 8 billion. And when you are recovering 8 billion of people's money, it means definitely you have to be corrupt. You have to find other ways of making money from the government. And I believe that's not fair. And that's one of the reasons why most of our colleagues supported direct primaries.
Senator, if we look deep into democracy, we would come across the fact that as representatives of the people, normally you represent Nigerians, and of course that's the way it should be. And your decisions are supposed to be decisions of Nigerians, which are just encapsulated or being brought forward at that level of governance. Now, did you really, or how much have you consulted, or have the National Assembly consulted with the people in trying to arrive at this decision, or was it just out of experience of the National Assembly members?
Well, anytime we're making bills or amendments on acts, you find that most of our people consult our constituency. We pick the feelings of Nigerians, what they really want. You remember when we were talking about electronic voting? A lot of Nigerians were in the opinion of electronic voting. So at the end of the day, we have to make up our mind to go what the people want, and we all agree now on electronic voting. So most of us, when we are passing a bill, we even do public hearing. The public hearing invites Nigerians of all categories, all stakeholders of all categories to come and air their views on what they really want. And those kind of issues, when you discuss with people, it means you bring your views to the people, and the people respond. So definitely it's not only our own making or our own thinking or our own opinion for our own interests, but certainly we wanted to talk to the people, and the people generally agree. And you find that for every decision you take, it can be 100%. You have to understand the merits. If the merits are more than the demerits, it means that you have succeeded. But no decision that you take should be 100%. But I believe majority of the people are in support of direct primaries in the Senate, and mostly our people in the villages or in our constituencies agree with direct primaries.
All right. Thank you, Senator Gaya. Let's bring in Samson Itodo at this point. Samson, now tell us, you've been an advocate of electoral reform, and we have seen a number of the amendments go through, and having you as a guest, you have applauded some, but of course also chided others. Do you consider this intervention by the Senate with regard to making it mandatory for political parties to adopt direct primaries, you consider this an urgent item for amendment, or it's surplusage? Whatever your response is, give us your answers and then reasons.
Well, thank you very much. And I'd like to say that it's heartwarming to see Senator Gaya, and let me just express my commendation to the Senate for rescinding its decision on electronic voting. It takes courage, and I'd say thank you for listening to the voices of Nigerians by adopting the House's position on electronic transmission of results. The issue of direct primaries is not only contentious, but I would say that it reflects the underbelly of democratic politics in Nigeria. If you look at one of the major functions that parties perform is candidate selection. Now, this process, has been signposted by violence, a lot of horse trading, And so political party primaries are arenas defined as war zones or marketplaces where there is exchange of money for delegate votes. Now, this intervention by the Senate, I must say that the reasoning and the philosophy behind this particular amendment is apt, and it's a welcome development, and it's a positive, I must say, development, because democratizing the candidate selection process enhances public participation and the participation of members of political parties in the nomination of candidates. And I agree that, yes, you're going to have more members of the parties participate in the process. It's going to help the parties to a large extent, build internal cohesion within the parties. The challenge with the proposal and the amendment is, the associated cost that this might accrue, both to the elections, to the parties, and to the country at large. But I must say this, that whether you have direct or indirect primaries, whether you restrict and constrict political parties to just direct primaries, none of these modes of candidate selection is insulated from manipulation or is insulated from compromise. We've got to put that on the table, that regardless of the mode that you apply, it is still susceptible to manipulation by political actors or by agents who are interested in hijacking the process. But does this proposed amendment, will it enhance the internal democracy of political parties? Yes, it will, if it is strictly applied. But there are issues and the operationalization that we need to consider. That at what cost will it come to political parties? Because you have 8,809 wards in the country. And so if you've got 18 parties, these parties would have to organize, primaries in all these 8,809. INEC would also have to deploy. So it increases the logistical burden on the Independent National Electoral Commission. But I'll say, for us as a people, is this cost too much to pay for addressing a system of electoral injustice, or a system that perpetuates, the nomination of unqualified candidates or hijack of the process? Honestly, I would say it is not too much of a cost to the country. But stakeholders may disagree. But my challenge with the amendment is the fact that it conscripts political parties. And maybe we would have retained the position of the existing law that gives the political parties, the latitude to determine the mode of their primaries. But the challenge, again, with that provision is the current practice clearly shows that political parties don't even adopt what the Electoral Act says. They introduce concepts like consensus, the modes of nominating candidates, which are alien to the Electoral Act, and no one holds the parties to account. If you look at the post-election, the number of disputes that result from the 2019 elections, out of over 1,000 cases, about 50% of those cases were pre-election matters based on candidate selection. So will this address concerns relating to the democratization of the candidate nomination process? I would say to a large extent, but it is no guarantee that the process would not be hijacked by political actors. So INEC and political parties and other stakeholders need to have a deeper conversation on how do we operationalize this particular amendment, what are the gaps and the loopholes that needs to be addressed, so that, one, it doesn't increase the cost of elections, or it doesn't strain the smaller political parties, but it also ensures that members of political parties participate in the candidate selection. And I'm fascinated about this idea of democratizing the process so that members of the parties at the wards can participate in nominating candidates that represent them in an election.
Thank you so much, Samson Itodo. Let's hear your views, Dr. Leonard Ezenwa, Chairman, Interparty Advisory Council. Now, when the Senate came up with this and got it approved. How did you receive it? Did it come to you as a bang, or was it a surprise, or were you, how much, contribution did you make in trying to arrive at this decision?
Okay, thanks for having me on the program. I think most times the distinguished senator has said something very clearly here, that they are in close consultations with the constituencies. And also, I think when you also say that he also somehow restated that he's also there in consultation with political parties, that I can tell you is that in coming out with that particular intervention or that bill, the political parties were not consulted. For us, what we want to do is we believe in democratizing the process. We believe that the candidate selection process should be democratic. We also believe that it is something every Nigerian should be involved in. But what we do not share is that we do not want the introduction of the Athenian democracy. Of course, you know the Greek Athenian democracy. That is basically an introduction of what we're having now. Apart from the cost element, we're likely going to have a lot of litigations around this. We have over 8,000 wards across the Federation. Now, the operationalization of this is what we are very concerned with. Now, when these things are done, it is only the two political parties. The idea is just the two political parties that most of them think are operating in the Nigerian political ecosystem. But you also have other political parties that are there and also trying to see how they can make valid contribution to our democratization process. That is not happening. Now, what we are saying is, if this kind of thing is going to be done, there has to be deeper consultations among political parties. We need to calm down and ask ourselves some basic questions. Is this workable? 1999 is not the same thing with 2021. It's a different ballgame entirely. They are 2 wars apart. And so if you are doing a thing like this, or you're coming up with this, we should be able to ask ourselves, consult ourselves, relate to ourselves, and say, look, this is the way it should go. Now, one other key thing we need to also notice this. Now, we just got a victory with the electronic transmission of election results. On one hand, Nigerians are rejoicing over it, and we're dramatizing over this rejoicing. On the other hand, you're coming out with direct primaries. The situation before is that it's going to be optional. The parties should be given the right to choose internally what they want or what they feel is better for them. Now it is mandatory that it must be direct primary. Now let's look at a situation like this. Now, if, for instance, at the end of the day, you're going to have a direct primary, for instance, a political party takes about 4 million Nigerians will come to Abuja, for instance, if the convention venue or the primary venue would be in Abuja, and after conducting all the primaries across the wards, and you have everybody converging in Abuja, say for a number about 4 million or 2 million, you can understand the kind of logistic nightmare we'll have in a place called Abuja. You can understand the dislocation of lives that will happen that period. So what we are saying is, it is not a situation of having so many people at the same time. But let's look at it as well. If you ask yourself, what are the members of these political parties? Each time there is a convention, that is when you find a mop-up of individuals coming in to assert their members of political parties. When the political space is shrinking, or when there is no activity, high level of activity, you don't see these members. But immediately you have an election, you see several of them coming up. Now, so the issue is, you cannot completely eradicate manipulation. It's not going to be possible. Manipulation of election results during the primaries will not completely go away. But what we need to do is, how do we come around and make this unworkable for both the newer political parties and the older political parties, so that we'll have a win-win for every person? As it is now, our position is that it is directed against the young political parties, and they want to kill us and get political parties out of the space. So for us, we are calling on Nigerians at this moment we're speaking that this is not a good idea for us now. Yes, direct primary is good, but does not connect with the political parties in Nigeria. We'll have to find a way around it.
Oh, thank you so much. But before we get off that, let's come back to Senator Kabir Gaya. I know you will want to respond to some of the issues he's raised, especially. My earlier question to you was consultation with the electorates and, of course, the party members. And here is another angle to it. I was thinking that, of course, political parties should have been consulted much earlier, but he's saying not all of them. But it seems like the two big parties are trying to consume by way of, ideas and the rest of them, the smaller parties, as he suggested. How would you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I believe we have done a lot of consultations. We did public hearings at national level, and we also had discussions at our various constituencies. And we're also party members. We are stakeholders in all our parties. Being senators, at least you are one of the elders of the party and you are a stakeholder. So issues are discussed. Where he raised the issue of smaller parties, either we are not encouraging them, but that's right. When a political party comes up with no large representation, doesn't mean it's a political party. You find that when we gave you room for parties to be registered, it's the condition for registering a new political party. Just have an office in Abuja. So if you go to Abuja and have a small shop, it's in federal capital, and you have an office called that's your office headquarters. Sadly, INEC must register you because you have a presence in Abuja. But that's not supposed to be a political party that canvasses for election. When you need a strong political party, it means they should have base in almost every state of the federation, or 2/3 of the states of the federation, or 2/3 of their presence in the ward areas, which that will help to enhance the party. So that if you have a popular candidate in a small party, he can go and merge with the bigger party and produce his and win an election at his ward level, and then be a strong member in a strong political party. But sadly, this issue of direct primaries is going to hinder a lot is going to checkmate bringing briefcase political parties.
Are you looking at it from the point of view of trying to reduce political parties?
We have tried. We have reduced political parties from 92 to about 17. And that was good enough because the remaining 60-something political parties that were disqualified, sadly, they were not really a viable strong party, or even existing strong parties which have population or coverage of a large area in the country. So therefore, there is a need to trim the political parties, because you find out the ballot paper we printed last time was about this size, with 92 political parties, is spending a lot of taxpayers' money and without any product. I remember when I went to an election in my village, an old woman came up and looked at the paper. She cannot see virtually all the symbols of political parties. She cannot recognize them because they are so tiny. So she asked me, I should show her which one is Buhari's party. And I have to say the electoral officer that please help her to show her which one is Buhari's party. So sadly, but if they are about 10, 12, or even reduced to 5, you find that the writings will be bold enough and the sizes will be bigger enough for people to recognize. Even people like us, if we don't have glasses on our faces, it may be difficult to even identify our own political parties. So definitely, I believe trying to trim, putting these conditions is good for the country. And for those opposing, who are against the direct primaries, sadly, no decision I told you earlier is perfect. Everything you take has merits and demerits, but as long as the merits are more, it may have succeeded. So we have over 70% of Nigerians are in support of direct primary. Just like when we talk about electoral transmission, over 70% of Nigerians are supporting direct primary. Electoral transmission, and we agree with them. So sadly, we consult people, we hear them, and we are within the community. Every time we go to our villages, we hear from people. When we meet with friends in Abuja, they also talk on these views. And gentlemen of the press, in all our TV, electronic medias, you also try to enlighten people what are the positions of anything that we take. Just like today, you are talking about direct and indirect primary. Anybody watching this program is being enlightened what is direct primaries and what is indirect primaries, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of these primaries. And certainly, you people are doing well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gaya. Well, Oluwole Osaze-Ozi, it's your turf. The whole idea of direct primaries, is it a welcome development or is it a needless intervention by way of amendment?
Well, thank you.
let me express my personal opinions to say that whichever mode, I think Samson made allusions to that, whichever mode of primaries we choose, the essence is that it should be democratic. It should represent the wishes of the people. It should represent the wishes of the party members. In theory, direct primaries seem more democratic, and but that's just scratching the surface. The truth is that many feel that there should be a choice made by the political parties whether I want to go this way or that way. The essence is that people should have a say. It should be democratic. And the Constitution, 1999 Constitution of the country says, you must have a democratic means of choosing your executive and your candidates. So whichever vehicle you enter, as long as it gets you to your destination. We tend to use the oversimplified form of direct primaries. You can have direct primaries and still have delegates. How does that happen? In the US, that's what happens. In 1998, that's what the PDP did. And what that means basically is it's like a hybrid. You go to each ward or local government, and each member of the party has a say as to who is their candidate, and elects, let's say, 100 delegates who now go to the convention. I think so. Dr. Leonard was making reference to that convention. Yeah. Now, each person has had a say. But to make it more manageable, rather than what Dr. Leonard was afraid of was that 2 million people might gather in a central place like Abuja. That's not necessarily the case. That's not necessarily the case. Now you can have these people who go there and have their say. That's what happens in the US. Even in general elections, they use the Electoral college system. But every party member has a say. So that's another mode, another form of direct primaries. I don't know whether the Senate, in its consideration, considered that. But you cannot have democratic elections where you do not have, for example, a good register. No, I dare say, and I stand to be challenged, none of the political parties, including what you call the big or older parties, has a comprehensive organic register as at today. INEC has persistently asked them for registers. If you do not have a register, that's the very foundation of every democracy. If you don't have a register, you cannot have a democratic election.
Register of members.
Of members, especially members entitled to vote. There's one is the register of members. Usually the parties will have a qualification as to who can vote. And so most of the time it says you have to be a financial member, not just being on the register, but a qualifying factor will probably be you're up to date with your dues. Now, fortunately, my understanding, I've not read the whole comprehensive thing. What I've read online is that the Senate says that the political parties will have a say in making guidelines as to how this thing should be conducted. So maybe that will be contained in the guidelines. But you must have a good register and know those who are entitled to vote. The Senate version I've read that has just been passed says, for example, that a good thing that each candidate or each aspirant cleared should be entitled to the guidelines. But that's faulty, not just the guidelines for the conduct of the elections. What we had proposed, Senator leadership was represented in conference, and I agree with His Excellency. There was a lot of consultation. There were lots of public hearings, both in national and zonal levels. Yeah. There were lots of public hearings. So IPAC and any other body who was interested could have vented their own position and told the people what they wanted. And the other channels they could easily have used as well. Now, we told the Senate leadership, look, this is good, but there must be certain basic safeguards. Part of it is that you should give every candidate a register of members entitled to vote at their primaries. That is not in the law. That's more important than even guidelines. Guidelines is important because the law requires you to publish the guidelines. But you must also have a register given to each and everyone. Before any election is held, INEC publishes a register and gives a register 30 days to the election. It just happened in Anambra. October 7th, INEC went and gave all political parties participating a register of those who are entitled to vote at that election. So we know. But
and this register can be electronic.
It can be electronic. It's probably better. That's where we're headed for. Ideally, they should have a biometric register. So that we had an occasion monitoring party primaries in I think it was Lagos State a few years back, where they had a register and they were calling names of people. And the minute you call someone, 3 people will get up. So it led to confusion. So you could, and that was the direct primary. It led to confusion. That was the end of that election. And I think what they probably did at the end of the day was write results, write names of their preferred candidates, and sent it to Abuja. So there can be confusion.
Yeah. Well, now you are citing an example. Tell us what your experience was like in INEC monitoring party primaries. Because Senator Gaya has indicated that one of the reasons for opting for direct primaries is the fact that the indirect primaries were often mismanaged by the political parties. And INEC was always a party when litigation came up with regard to who the proper candidate of a party was. What was the experience like during your time?
Incredible. I think that is, as using Sampson's word, the underbelly of democratic experience. Party primaries are usually very badly managed by the political parties themselves. And if you do not have democracy in primary elections, you don't expect democracy in secondary elections. If you don't have democracy in selecting members of your own party, you share the same ideology, you share the same values and the same systems, then how do you expect to do that in the larger society? Political parties, I've always said, are the drivers of democracy. You cannot have democracy without Democrats. And you're not a Democrat because you get elected. That doesn't make you a Democrat. It's an effort. It's something that is just there. You must believe that people have a choice. They should have choices. That's what democracy is all about. It might be a good choice, it might be a bad choice. It doesn't matter. But that is their choice. So your duty as a politician is to persuade them that your position, your choice is better than the next person's choice. The experience has been that, as we speak, Anambra election is less than 3 weeks away, on the 6th of November. Tomorrow, the Supreme Court will have to decide on candidacy in one political party. This same week, a couple of days ago, it decided in another political party, different political party. And as we speak, there are still cases in the Court of Appeal, in the High Court, dealing with an election in 3 weeks' time, less than 3 weeks' time. So there's that uncertainty, because, and that's nothing to do with whether it's direct or it's indirect. Very often you have parallel primaries. And if you have the direct or indirect does not cure those fundamentals. And that's why sometimes we should concentrate on the bigger picture, on how to get those safeguards, whether it's direct, whether it's indirect. If the party does not have a register, how can you have a democratic election? How can you have democracy? If you do not have, it's organic, to be fair. And you know how fast, how quickly people change and migrate from one party to the other. So it's, on a daily basis, it continues to change. So you have a cutoff date. Let's assume 14 days or 15 days or 30 days to the election. This is
like the shareholders in the company.
They are like the shareholders in the company. Now you must be entitled to dividend, to entitled to participate. Good analogy. To participate in the annual general meeting, you either do it by yourself or by proxy, but your name must be on the register of members at a cutoff date. That's what entitles you. So if you buy your shares after that cutoff date, if your name is not there, you are not entitled to, maybe in subsequent ones. So there must be, that safeguard is so important. Not only must you have that register, but you must give the copy to INEC, who's going to monitor the election, and you must give a copy to every aspirant who is going to be there. That is missing in the law, and I hope there's an opportunity either in conference or subsequently to entrench that in the law. You can't leave it to the political parties because political parties have not managed things too well in that regards.
Okay.
That's basic.
It's all right. Samson Itodo, let's hear your views about what would be a reaction to, what Osadino came up with. A lot of them really as such. Looking at the register as one fundamental basis for, credible election, especially direct or indirect. At least there should be that register. Looking also at the fact that Nigerians frequently switch over from this party to that party anytime, any day, just at will. And also looking at the fact that, membership does not just entail you being a card-carrying member, but of course having to meet certain requirements. These are all things that they should be looked at in trying to see who votes and who doesn't vote whenever there's going to be a direct primary. How would you react to this?
First, on the point of this culture of cross-carpeting, you get this permeating every aspect of your democratic process because of the non-subscription to fundamental values of democracy. And so our political space, is dominated by this culture of valueless politics, that people don't subscribe to certain values, and they don't believe even in the ideology, if any, of the parties that they belong to. And this is just an indicator that the political parties that exist in Nigeria as at today are not properly institutionalized. And so because of their weak state and their weak nature, it's difficult to build cohesion, around certain ideology, around principles and values and norms, that keeps the party alive. So it is easier for people to just move and jump ship from one party to another. The second critical point is the fact that all the parties are defined by a singular identity. And so it is easier for people to just, cross and jump from one platform to another, because politicians in Nigeria do not believe in institutions, lasting institutions that helps the democratization process. They are only interested in capturing political power. I wish that the desire to capture political power is to advance the common good and public interest. But in this case, they just look for platforms that are used as power securing machines. So they're just special, what we call special purpose vehicles. And so if a platform cedes its space for you to run, it doesn't care whether you are a criminal, it doesn't care whether you have the competence or the capacity. All it cares is whether you have the war chest to do what? To rig elections, to buy delegates, and to distribute patronage to the high-ranking members of the political party. And it's just very sad. And that is why I hope that, this reform process will give political parties a time to introspect and say, how do we commit ourselves to building institutions? Because look at it, even the two major political parties today, they are all riddled with what? With leadership crisis, transition from one, just managing transition from one leadership to another is a problem. Because there is that conflict of interest, conflict of values, and conflict of ideology within the political parties, and it's very sad. I hope that our parties will emerge from this reform process, to think about how do we contest for power to advance the common good, that we have respect, that parties have respect for their members and not the hegemons or oligarchs that determine the shape, the nature, and character of political parties. The second point about, the register of parties, I completely agree with Barrister Uzi 101% that no party today in Nigeria has an updated, accurate, and credible register of members. What you see happen at delegate is the leadership, either at the national level or at the state level, determines who the delegates are. And maybe Senator Gaya isn't putting this out. The truth is, one of the reasons why the National Assembly and legislators are subscribing to direct primaries is to protect, legislators from the overbearing influence of state governors who determine, delegates in political parties and determine who does what, who comes to the National Assembly. It is sad today that our reality projects that, a seat in the National Assembly is a reward for loyalty and sycophancy at the state level. Governors determine legislators and not the members of the party, because they have control. If you look at the leadership of the parties at the state, they bankroll the candidates, they fund the parties, is it the offices of the parties, is it the salaries of the officers of the parties? The governors have all the leadership of the parties in their pocket. So it's easier for them to write names of people who will do what, who would vote at delegates or at elective congresses. Look at what happened over the weekend. The gale of parallel congresses just simply tells you that we've got a complex problem and our political class are not ready to abide by the rules. So I'm just wondering, even if we limit parties to direct primaries, will it address the electoral injustice that we experience? No. Will it make political parties rethink their strategy? No. We just need to continually hold parties to account to higher standards. The same way political parties hold INEC to higher standards. They hold INEC to release register of voters 30 days before the elections, or publish register of voters at the polling station. That's the same way parties should also imbibe those practices as well. Publish your register of members. Ensure all aspirants have access to the register. Don't wait until it is 24 hours before the date of the primary, you now release the register of voters, or even release what? The venue of the primaries. Because we've seen it, cases where the venue of party primaries are changed 3 or 4 times. In fact, we have it on record, even in this country, where one of the aspirants for one of the governorship elections was given a different venue whilst the primaries were holding in a different venue. In fact, it even happened last weekend where there were several congresses, and now the leadership of the parties at the national level is now saddled with the responsibility of determining which leadership it would recognize. This kinds of confusion impacts on the level of citizens' participation in the process. It also compromises the choice that voters make. And choice is critical in a democratic setting. And if we consider ourselves, a constitutional democracy with high regard for public participation, then political parties must not compromise the choice that people make even before the day of election. But what you currently have is a system where parties compromise the choices that citizens make by nominating candidates who are not only qualified, but don't have the requisite moral credentials to hold power in trust for the vast majority of our people.
Samson Itodo, thank you very much there for your insight. And gentlemen and listeners at home and viewers at home, just to indicate that the kind of primaries we are talking about now are broadly referred to as closed primaries. That is to say, primaries involving members of a political party. In some other jurisdictions, you can also have open primaries. California state electoral state law could sometimes permit non-members of political parties to participate in the choice of the candidates for elections. Those are open primaries, not the general election itself, open primaries, but the variety we are talking about here now, closed primaries, direct or indirect. It also occurs to me that the more we have interrogated this issue, the more perhaps we are indirectly or invariably agreeing with the rationale advanced earlier by Senator Kabiru Gaya as to why the Senate, in its wisdom, opted for direct primaries. Dr. Leonard Ezenwa, the shenanigans that have often governed primary elections in Nigeria, and therefore the frequent cry for internal democracy in the political parties would appear to be a problem that the Senate is seeking to cure with this amendment by making it mandatory for parties to have direct primaries. And you can see the various measures that are required. You must first of all manage your political party very well. You must know who your members are. There are various steps and stages, rather than somebody wangling a name and sending one name, another person withdrawing another name, and then you are left with litigation all over the place. Tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, I think you are spot on when you say that. I must tell you that the political parties have been having or bedeviled with so many crises, especially in this current electoral cycle. I've always maintained, the parties have always maintained as their leader that for each political parties, you do not interfere with their constitution, with the way they recruit their members, with the way they recruit their leadership, and then also in the way they conduct their elections. But one common thread is, in whatever manner and whatever mode you are going to conduct your election at the internal level, it must be democratic. It must be accepted by not only your members, it must also be accepted by the Nigerians at large, who are also very much interested as a stakeholder. One of the key things we must note is this. What is the motivation now for? The motivation that informed the direct primaries. I think Otodo mentioned it. It's the backlash of what happened coming from the last primaries, especially in Anambra and some other states, and also the Congress that is going on. Now, certain honorable, distinguished members of the National Assembly are just essentially concerned on how they can hold themselves tight in their various positions and ensure that the fight between them and the governors on who actually gets the delegates or who gets the power in the party is held forth. That is what informed that. Now, for us, it's going to be a collegiate arrangement. A collegiate arrangement where in the sense that you have a measure of the people coming out to say who will actually partake and also participate in the election and also vote their leadership. when you adopt the presidential system of government, just as we are doing in this country, and also taking a tail from what we have in the United States, that's essentially some of the things we do with local peculiarity. Now, regarding your question specifically, the parties as we speak today, we only have about 0.002% of people, I can say, that pay their financial dues. The parties do not have these resources. That's what we have to note. All the members who have that claim they are members of the party from time to time do not pay their membership dues. And this falls back to the leadership of the party itself. What the leaders of the party do to avoid penalty or anything that will come from INEC, the party leadership will try as much as possible to safeguard the parties in the first place. What is the way forward? The way forward for political parties is this. If Party A decides that it's going to adopt either direct or indirect primaries, what we should be concerned with, all members in that political parties should be involved in the process, either by delegate arrangement, or either by representative arrangement, or either by wholesome arrangement. But in all, it must be seen to be democratic and almost convey some level of acceptance among the people. Just as Osese has pointed out, there's no way you can have, if you don't have internal democracy within the party itself, you cannot also have external democracy outside the system. So the point being made is, we need to, as stakeholders, try as much as possible to work together to make these things work out for us. The political parties are not against direct primary in the way it is done. But that is not a checkmate for the manipulation of election results. It is not in any way. The more you even go to direct primaries, the sense is that most of these people also hijack the process and hijack the system. What do we do? What we do is, now, the party register, which we have been clamoring for, which we have been shouting for, because in this country, you do not have organic membership. Take, for instance, you're calling for a convention, or you're calling for a congress, or you're calling for a wholesome gathering. What we have experienced in this country, that each person that comes for this particular gathering are paid. Circle round. Each person that comes, whether you're getting, let's say for Abuja, you want to get an event in a particular location. Every person that comes from Duse, any person that comes from anywhere, they are paid for them to be there. No person will want to become a place without being rewarded in someone. So when you are talking about the political parties, you also think about what are the state of the people as well. The people are not willing to do anything without being rewarded in some way or some way, either in the short run or in the long run.
What is then is the duty of political parties in mobilizing membership?
This is the challenge. This is the challenge I'm trying to paint. Ours is basically to go out, create awareness, advocate, ensure that the people understand what the values of the parties are, what the principles of the parties are, what the ideologies are, the details of their manifestos and all that. But in also doing this, you must connect with the people. And in connecting with the people, you must create avenues or spaces where the people will come together for them to listen to you, or for you also to talk back to them. Now, in trying to do this, to create these windows, to create these opportunities, what we do have is that when you get this masses of people in a place, it is not organic. We're being realistic about it. You get them to come maybe in a stadium or in any environment. The people you're moving from one place, not because they do not share in your ideology, not because they do not believe in your manifesto, not because they do not want the party, but as you're moving them from this point to this point, it involves a whole lot of things apart from cost. And the thing boils down to this. If political parties don't have the infrastructure to do all this enormous responsibility, in what way can they be supported? And that's why we said it's important that everybody is placed on the playing field, good playing field. We are saying that the party should be funded on a first level. Let the parties be funded on the first level. If the parties are funded, let's say, for instance, let's say we're starting an electoral cycle. At that beginning of the electoral cycle, the parties are funded. Now, you give them like 2 or 3 years where they cannot perform or where they cannot, the party is deregistered. But in the situation where you have parties, 1 or 2 parties that have accessed the corridors of power, amass resources of the state, use the resources now to also further their ends and also project their own party. It is to the disadvantage of other political parties. You cannot place that same political party in the same fold with other ones. And so these younger political parties are having challenges. And so in what way can they be supported is only if they are supported or funded, so that we can come on the same playing field. So yes, there are problems with the parties and we're working on it. We will not say it is 100%. It's a work in progress. And we have all identified that. And with the effort of all Nigerians, we'll be able to get to that point. For now, internal party primaries is a contestation that has been very, very tough, and we have seen litigations around it. And we also note, in an economy where you don't have opportunities, people don't have what they do, the only window where they can express themselves and find some leverage to recondition their lives is to seek way and try to get themselves in politics, especially the ones they have in Nigeria. Finally, Nigeria cannot give what it doesn't have. What obtains in this country is a reflection of what the political parties are, what the politicians are, what the political leaders are, and what every one of us are. So it is what we give to the system, is what the system brings back to us. So we're a reflection of the system, and that's what we're having. We should be having a conversation. How do we correct this? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lene Ezonwa. I don't think I heard you so very well when you said the party should be funded. But all the same, we'll talk about that much later as we move on.
That's exactly what he said.
He didn't say anything different.
So we'll not take a break, really. We're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We're talking about direct or indirect primaries in Nigeria. And we'll look at things like cost of elections or primary elections or direct elections, and indeed good fatherism as such when we come back after this break. Please stay with us.
Very aggressive response from the very beginning. If you remember the very first case in Nigeria, very well contained, very few infections arose from that. We started airport screenings and temperature checks way before anyone really understood what was going on. On the front lines of the response, the team here at the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, supported all the 36 states. At some point, we had teams in 32 of our 36 states concurrently, leading the response in the emergency operations centers, making sure we're getting the surveillance data, building up our information resources on our website. Our website became one of the most visited websites on the continent, as many other African countries were looking to the leadership Nigerians provided. At our Incident Coordination Center, people were working literally 14, 15 hours every single day.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Dear compatriots, our country can be as great as we want.
Let us all commit ourselves to its greatness.
We must be willing to set aside our differences, unite and stay as one.
In our expansive landmass, human and material resources, and plurality lies our strength.
Let our challenges lead us to rediscover our common ground, and together, let's find solutions.
This will take some time, so it requires patience, tolerance, and forgiveness from every one of us.
Let all hands come on deck to protect and transform our country.
Let us unite and see each other not as adversaries, but as brothers and sisters.
Together, we can build a better Nigeria for ourselves and for the next generations.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA, with support from Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Welcome back. We're discussing this morning direct or indirect primaries on Good Morning Nigeria, and of course we have, good hands here and good experts, of course, talk about this. The Senate Committee Chair on INEC, Senator Gaya, is, here, and of course we've been talking so much about that, and I really want to start off this segment with him. Senator, has the Senate or the National Assembly really considered this? Looking at the number of wards we have in this country, and we have over 8,000 of them, and of course looking at the issues raised by Osaze, talking about the register of political parties and having to have them, authenticated to avoid duplication and the rest of the case. Example he gave, like say in Lagos and some other places which are all over the place. And when you look at the cost of organizing direct primaries from whatever level to whichever level, and looking at the cost of how it used to be when it was open for political parties to either choose direct or indirect. I mean, don't you see that as a very colossal, amount in trying to have, candidates out, and that could be used, for manipulations by godfathers, by money bags, and the rest of them?
Well, when you are talking of direct primaries, the expenses are less.
Is that so?
Let me explain to you. I've been in this since in policy for quite a while, and I've gone through direct and indirect primaries, and I know, for example, like when you have to move the people from wards, maybe to local government headquarters or to state headquarters or to national headquarters for primaries, it means you have to spend money to transport them. And when you bring them there, you have to accommodate them. And that brings a lot of cost into it. But when you are doing direct primary, it's only done at ward level. And we have over 8,000 locations, which means these people at 8,000 locations are not bringing them up to headquarters of the state or to national headquarters. They will be there, they are within their community, they are within their areas, and they know each other as political party members. So there is no issue of another non-party member, you carry him from one state to Abuja to participate in another primary. So it costs you less. But because of the area of coverage that parties must send a representative, of course, every party that is strong enough will have a representative in every ward. And that could be a representative who will be in charge of the primaries. And the list of registered members is also important, because you can now get away from these briefcase political parties, that every ward you should have a member, and membership of that ward should be produced. And we said that they should submit the list of registered members of political parties to INEC, so that at least 2 weeks before the primaries, this list should be there, and then the list should be given to any other aspirant who has qualified to go through the elections of the primaries. So in that case, there's a lot of areas of check and balance, and the party can decide that a member of a political party is eligible to vote. In some other parties, they could say you must be a financial member of the party. So we have not taken a decision for the parties. They say they should decide their mode their criteria for primaries. But if party wanted to make money, they can say it must be a financial member. But some other parties, they can say, well, any member, as long as it's registered as in the register book, can be able to participate in the primaries. I think that helps a lot. So the issue of really costing, it costs more in indirect primaries, honestly, than direct primaries. I went through both areas, and direct primaries, you just send your representative who can be your agent in those locations, and the party members will be there, and you just raise the picture of your candidate or your aspirant, then people vote that candidate, or you queue behind that picture, which is easier. And when you go for indirect, it means there will be specific candidates, and those candidates are sometimes hijacked. You find that 2-3 days before the primaries, they take candidates to, even when they're supposed to do the primaries in Abuja, they'll hide them in Nasarawa State, and when it is the day for the primaries, then they bring them out.
You're talking about the delegates, not the candidates.
I'm talking about the delegates, yes, not candidates. So the delegates really, when the candidate takes these delegates, it costs them a lot, and there will be a lot of this horse trading. So sadly, we look at the...
Sorry, distinguished senator, you know, this is like the quarantine of delegates at elections, so that they don't get contaminated by another potential money bag. It's something that we hear. I mean, Sajel is nodding. He will respond to this. During party primaries or conventions, they quarantine delegates who have been, let's say who have been chosen. Put them in a specific hotel, and if it's actually a garrison that you have.
It's no entry for anybody.
No entry, no exit until after voting. That's correct, distinguished senator.
Yeah, they do that, but that's why we are running away from indirect primaries, because we like to cut away from all these corrupt practices, really, because when you are inducing funds into primaries and you won election, or you become a candidate based on inducing funds, it means really the whole system has failed, just like what he said, that once you have a good background or you have a bad start point, then definitely at the end of the day it will be bad. If you paid money to win primaries, it means you run a bad system of government, because you have to think of recovering the expenditure you put during the primaries. So sadly, we thought a lot about it. National Assembly really thought much, deliberated a lot on this issue before we finally came to this issue of direct primaries.
But really, Senator,
I hope the people and the party will cooperate, and let's have a sound and good direct primaries.
And lest I forget, Senator, how would you react to insinuations in certain quarters about, the clash of interest between, legislators and the governors in trying to, hijack or
Well,
rather
first of
decide?
all, I'm a former governor of a state, and I need to protect my colleagues. There is in some areas there is insertions or powers being imposed by state governors because they are the chairman of they are the leaders of that political party in that state, and they wanted to make sure that they have people that will continue dancing their tune or be supporting their thing. But you see, the issue of legislator is we're really facing problems in this country. Less than 30 or about 30% of legislators usually are turned back. Come back to National Assembly. So therefore, and in legislation, the more you come, the more experienced you are, the more productive you are in the system, and the more we improve the issue of the governance or the issue of legislation in this country. But sadly, when you have new person every year or every time when there's election, it doesn't help us in having a good legislative system. So therefore, it's also good in that. So you find that in the United States of America, you have people coming back for about 45 years in the Senate. But here it's very difficult, just like some of us who are only getting 16 years in the chamber, saying we're one of the oldest. The 16 years is virtually nothing.
So it's not only that qualifies the person to write jump, Distinguished Senator, thank you. I was just wondering, Sazauzi, well, two issues. The first is the proposal made by Dr. Leonard Ezenwa, says political parties should be funded. We used to have that earlier on, but tell us what happened. That's one. And then the claim about direct primaries being potentially more expensive than indirect primaries. Listening to Senator Gaya, and from what we know, is this likely to be the case? And are we conflating the situation where, say, all party members will have to converge on a certain location for the choice of their presidential candidate? Every primary is not about presidential election.
Thank you very much. Yes, two very good questions. Let me take the latter first. I beg to disagree with the distinguished senator that it may necessarily be cheaper. And he has allayed my fears in one regard, but heightened my fears in another. He has allayed my fears in the fact that he said that the register will be given to all aspirants. I'm so glad to hear that. But what I did read online was that the guidelines will be given. There's a big difference between the two. Yeah. So if that is the case, as you said, I'm so glad to hear that. I think most of us will be very pleased about that, that at least the register 14 days to the election will begin to all aspirants and given to INEC. So the INEC monitors come, they'll see the thing. So that's really good. So, but you have, sorry, Excellency, you have heightened my fear, and I guess many people's fears, in the sense that you're looking at this phone, and that dovetails into your question, from one perspective, the perspective of the politician only. Yeah. Only. You don't look at it for cost of INEC. INEC has now to deploy to almost 9,000 areas. Has to send delegates to that. It doesn't have that number of staff.
No, so I have those staffs in the local government areas.
They do have.
Yeah, you have to supervise only in every local government. You have to supervise only about 10 to maximum 15 locations.
Yes, sir.
That means 10 wards to 15 wards.
Correct.
So I'm sure in every local government, INEC must have more than 15 staffs.
In some,
which they can use, which they can use them to monitor, and they have ad hoc staff, NYSCs and others. So if they were monitoring pooling units, which is in hundreds of thousands of number, there is nothing wrong in them going through only 8,000 voting units. Voting locations.
That is about the.
So I believe INEC can be able to monitor, and that's why even in our law we said INEC shall, which means it's mandatory for INEC to monitor the primary. We don't want parties to have problems, and you have different locations of primaries for direct primaries. But where INEC supervise, then it becomes more authentic. It is the authentic one.
Thank you. Now, but INEC does not have. It probably has about that 1,000 odd permanent senior staff. Yeah. So and it's not everybody that's deployable to the field. Yeah, that's not everybody. So yes, you probably have to now have budgetary allocation for that purpose. Yeah. So that is increasing the costs to INEC. It probably will not be good to send only one person. Yeah. is more easy, more susceptible to manipulation when you send only one staff. So it has to recruit other people.
Yeah.
So that's additional costs to INEC. And we're looking at cost to society. One is the cost being borne by the individual out of his or her own choice. The other one is the mandatory cost you have imposed on the commission. You have imposed additional costs to the political parties. Yeah. Political parties must send monitors and officials to supervise and ensure the guidance. One, to conduct the elections itself. Two, to get people to supervise and ensure that thing is being done in accordance with that. So that's additional cost. Additional cost to security agencies. Security agencies must monitor those things because we've just come out of one party's primaries, and you know the fracas, the incidents of violence and threats of violence. So those are all additional costs to society and to the taxpayers, as opposed to those spending their own money. So I beg to differ. I don't think it will cause cost, and it doesn't stop corruption. Another thing we have not flagged is the fact that there's that corruption, not necessarily money in terms of money. We've had elections, primary elections, where the total number of registered, of results of people who voted exceeds the total number of voters that INEC has on its register. It exceeds the total number of votes the winners of those primaries got in subsequent elections. So you have 2 million people voting for A in the primaries, but when it comes to the main election, you have less than 1 million people voting. How do you explain those kind of things? It's all part of the corruption.
What became a manager